Martian Manhunter fights Cyborg Superman.
Arrow, the Flash, and the Legends team up.
And the romance between Heatwave and Supergirl begins.
Yes, we're going to talk about all that and more as we review all the CW DC TV shows. Hi, I'm Jason Inman.
And I'm Ashley Victoria Robinson.
And welcome to DCTV Recap, where we review, unpack, and give you some predictions about all the CW DC TV shows. And this is a special DCTV show because it is the 4-part Heroes vs. Aliens crossover. And we're going to talk about all 4 episodes and how they mix together and mingle and put the peanut butter with the chocolate in the superhero universes. But we're going to break it down section by section. If you want to skip ahead to your favorite show, all you got to do is go down to the description, click on those little links in there, skip ahead to the video. You can skip ahead to Flash, skip ahead to Legends, go back to Supergirl, however you want to do it. Let's jump right into Supergirl.
Supergirl Season 2, Episode 8, Medusa. As Eliza comes to National City for Thanksgiving, Kara turns to Lena for help when Cadmus unleashes a virus that instantly kills aliens, then is asked by Barry Allen and Cisco Ramon for help with an alien invasion on their Earth.
Okay, so let's, for Supergirl, since Supergirl has the least percentage part of this crossover. It has like a 3% crossover. Supergirl's going to be broken down like we normally do.
Okay.
We're going to go good, then we're going to go bad. But for the rest of them, I think they are so intertwined that we're just going to talk about it all together. But Supergirl, start out with the good. Okay, right out of the bat, I liked Mon-El walking into Thanksgiving. This is the best I've ever liked Mon-El. And him not getting that stuffing as a food item, so he literally took all the stuffing out of his mattress. One, where did he get that mattress? Is it Jimmy's mattress?
Is he still living with Jimmy?
We don't know. I'm going to assume that he tore apart Jimmy's mattress because I think it's funny.
But Jimmy doesn't like it.
Yeah.
I thought that was easily the best joke of the whole episode.
It's the best Mon-El joke of ever.
It's the best Mon-El moment
100%.
of all time. I thought Helen Slater was really, really excellent
Mama
in this episode as well, and I liked seeing more an exploration of her relationship with Alex than we've seen in season 1. I thought she was really great.
I thought she was really great in this. First of all, we got to talk about the vibe portal over the Thanksgiving table. Of course, we all knew from the first episode that this was Vibe. It was very good.
Yeah.
All right, here's an interesting thing. I like a lot of the scenes between Lena Luthor and her mama. What's her name?
Lorelai?
I don't care. Mama Luthor, as we're going to call her. And I thought it was interesting because I thought it was interesting that they decided to make Lena adopted in this. Because Lena in the pre-Crisis on Infinite Earths, she is blood with Lex. Post-Crisis, she's a foster child.
Interesting.
So she's adopted in, just like in the Supergirl show. So I found it very interesting that they decided to go with that version of Lena Luthor.
It's also an immediate way to make her an outsider.
Of the Luthor family, yes.
And I do find that the most of the CW adapted material is post-Crisis, if not post-New 52. So I think it makes sense that that's the Lena Luthor that we went with.
What else did you like from this episode?
I loved the Alex stuff. That's like my...
Specifically, what about it?
So this is my favorite through line of the season, I think. And I like that we finally get to see it take a step forward in her... I mean, it's nice that she comes out to her mom and they're great about it. But we've seen that beat with Kara specifically already. I liked that her and Maggie finally had feelings at each other and they kissed. I thought it was really gratifying.
Well, that's towards the end of the episode, so let's just wait on that.
It is, but I thought that this was a nice payoff to the storyline that's been seeded so far throughout this season, whereas all the other storylines are still in motion.
Okay, let's talk about the biggest betrayal of the entire episode. The heartstring pulling moment of the episode. Let's talk about when Keelix, not Kelix, Supergirl, Keelix, was evil and then was killed by Supergirl. Poor Keelix! Keelix, no! That's for Keelix.
I was very sad by that, actually.
We will remember you, Keelix.
Oh my God! Stop! He's coming back.
Will he? How?
He will be back the next time. The next time we see the Fortress of Solitude, I'm getting to predictions early. The next time we see the Fortress of Solitude, Kara's gonna go there either at the request of or to discover that Superman is there, and Keelix will be back to normal.
Listen, viewers, you hold her to that because I love Keelix and I want him to come back.
So do I.
You hold her to that. If it doesn't happen, you blame her.
No,
Okay.
don't tweet at me.
Any episode with Keyless is a good episode.
But it's an excellent use of that character as well because he's like a dog. Like he's
Yeah.
the character that you like, and when you do bad
He's
things,
the best crypto we have on the
when
show.
you do bad things to Keylix, like it hurts.
It does
It
hurt.
hurts.
He didn't do anything. He's just the robot butler.
He did no. He's Robot Alfred.
It's all he is.
Poor Keylix.
Okay, let's talk about another interesting thing in the fortress. We get to see her dad again, Kara's dad, Zor-El, who is kind of, you don't know, kind of the evil El brother. Also, he's very evil. And
Yeah.
he is, because it's interesting that we find out that the Medusa virus was created by him. And also, because if you don't know, in the current comic books, in the New 52 comic books and DC Rebirth, her dad, Zor-El, is Cyborg Superman. So it's interesting also that her dad appeared in the same episode that we got a Cyborg Superman.
I'm actually really glad that they divorced those two characters. That I don't like them being one and the same.
You don't like her dad being Cyborg Superman?
I don't. But I like the idea that her current father figure is an analog of Cyborg Superman. So I like that there's sort of a convoluted way to get to that.
Yes.
But yeah, Zor-El is a jerk.
Yes.
And he's evil, and
don't trust Zor-El.
And it's sad. It's sad for Supergirl because she's so pure and she's so good.
She's so good. What else did you like from this episode?
I liked her. I liked her relationship with Mon-El, the way it developed. Not because I liked them romantically, but I think that toward the end of the episode, when she has to decide how she feels about him now that he's not dying, I think that's like a complex beat that she played very well. I think it was a good Mon-El episode, really, overall.
I really appreciated Supergirl chasing the missile at the very end, because it was very reminiscent to me of Superman the movie. Because Superman the movie, he chases that missile. I thought it was very... And Supergirl lately has been doing some nice nods to previous Superman storylines, which I really, really appreciate. Another interesting thing that I loved was the secret aliens whose faces we didn't get to see, and we're like, where is the Daxamite
the guys who are hunting down Mon-El?
who look like women, by the way. They look like it was women.
They sound like women.
I think that... Well, I'll leave that for predictions. I'll leave that for predictions. So I don't know what that is.
What did you think about the Hairwood on Hairwood violence that we saw in this episode?
I liked it because I predicted it in a previous DCTV recap.
That is true. That is very true.
And finally, for me, the last final beat, and then we'll get your final beat, the good stuff. I just like any time that Barry Allen and Kara get to interact, because he shows up at the very end. Cisco gets to come to Earth, and then Blake Neely, the man, the master behind the music here. As soon as Barry shows up, you hear the Flash theme. Yeah, well, it's not that, but it's like, because Barry has this softer piano music.
Oh, he does, yeah.
And that's the theme they play as soon as they show up. And again, one of my favorite parts about any of these crossovers is getting to hear, because each one of these heroes has a theme.
Yes.
And getting to hear those themes on the other shows always makes me happy.
It makes your nerd brain go.
Yeah, it's a nerd, I'm a score buff guy. So
I liked, the thing that I really liked that kept on this episode was that Cisco's immediate reaction to being in Kara's apartment is like, you have a nice Earth here.
It's big.
Like, it is clean, it is well decorated. I thought Cisco, even though we only had a couple lines, I really enjoyed him capping off the episode.
Although, I will say this, I think if we've seen Cisco's apartment a couple episodes ago in The Flash.
Oh, yeah.
I'm pretty certain that his apartment is just Kara's apartment redressed.
I think it is, judging by the layout.
I'm pretty certain it's the same exact set. So I think it's kind of funny that he's like, oh, I like this, all right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the bad. What did you not like in this episode?
I didn't like the kiss.
Me either.
I liked one of the kisses. I didn't like the Kara and Mon-El kiss. It's telegraphed from a zillion miles away from the minute Mon-El shows up, especially when Jimmy not continuing on as the love interest. I think it is super creepy because he's Superman light, and Superman is her cousin. So for me,
things work differently on Krypton.
And Daxam. For me, like, that just, like, tweaks me the wrong way, even though I know, like, there's nothing super strange about it. But, like, that's not a storyline that I need to see developed, and I was really glad that we sort of did away with any Kara love interest.
In my notes, I wrote yuck to that.
Yeah, it was not good.
Here's what I'm going to say. I have a bunch of bad things, but all my bad things are minor. So if you don't mind, I would love to just run through all of them really quickly.
Let's go for it.
Because I actually didn't have a lot of problems with this episode.
I think this was quite a good episode.
I quite enjoyed this episode a lot, but I have a bunch of minor things.
Okay, go.
In the Alien Bar, we have a Rob Thomas cover.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I wrote that down. You don't believe me? Go back and listen. When Hank Henshaw was hiding the fake bomb.
Yeah.
What the hell is with Cyborg Superman's faceplate? It looked dumb. His little mask thing.
I don't know, but I know that David Harriman posted on Instagram that he sat for 2 hours in a chair covered in latex to make that.
It didn't look good. It didn't look good.
Not.
2 hours wasted, my friend. I don't understand why the Kryptonians would make a virus to hurt aliens. They're aliens.
Right, like why they're like Nazis?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Also, here's the biggest problem I had this episode. Maggie Sawyer gets hurt right here. In that area, so they could do a sexy, like, ooh, she's under the blanket, maybe she's naked scene. Alex is field dressing her wound. Alex, not a doctor. What the hell?
Maybe the DEO didn't have any doctors that day. They were too busy tending to Mon-El.
We've seen plenty of doctors around that DEO, okay? They are a government organization. And Maggie Sawyer is just like, yeah, sure, I'll let the girl that I sort of have a crush on give me stitches. What the hell?
Maybe.
No. I will accept portals from other universes. I will accept Supergirl not being able to stop a missile. I will accept John Jones turned into a white Martian. But Alex knowing how to be a doctor? No.
No, you are correct.
That health insurance is not going to cover the mistake that Alex makes, Maggie.
Oh.
All right. So any other bad things that you didn't like in Supergirl?
No, I really dug this up. My big
Great.
thing was just
The field dressing. I know! Right? And that's why we're going to move right into the rating of this episode. Ashley, between 1 to 5, 5 being the best, what would you give this episode of Supergirl?
I am going to give this episode of Supergirl a solid 4 out of 5. If they hadn't forced that kiss, I would have given it a 5.
Interesting.
Just saying, I really didn't like it.
Interesting.
How about you?
I would give this episode of Supergirl also a 4.
Yay!
I really liked it. And if we hadn't had Alex play doctor, I probably would have given it a 5. Alex playing a doctor and the kiss probably would have made me give it a 5.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's move straight into our predictions for future episodes of Supergirl. Ashley, any thoughts you have about what's coming on Supergirl?
So we teased that there was going to be a Guardian reveal at the beginning of the Thanksgiving dinner, and then none of them got around to it. So I think that...
Oh, the Jimmy Olsen Guardian.
Yeah.
I forgot about him.
Yeah,
That's probably why I like this episode, no Guardian.
I wish I could have. I think that, I almost said Winnie, but Jimmy and Win are going to not, quote, man up and tell Kara what's going on, and I think Alex is going to out them, and that I think Kara's going to feel really betrayed and it's not going to go over well, and then that might drive a wedge between her and Alex, even though they're quite close currently in the story. How about you? What do you think is coming up for Supergirl?
My prediction is about the alien people that we saw on the ship that are looking for Mon-El. I have a feeling that they are one of two things. They are either Daxamites, so that we can have more Kryptonians in the show. So we can have more, and we have to bring Superman back.
We don't have Fort Ross, so we need to get him from somewhere.
Or I think they are Durlans, and Durlans are a alien race that you see a lot in the Legion of Superheroes. Now, in a perfect world, I would love if that ship is secretly full of Legion of Superhero members back from the future, and they're looking for Mon-El. Like, they were expecting Mon-El's pod to be there, and something's broken with the timeline, like a certain speedster did to the whole multiverse, maybe? And so they're like, oh, he's not here, so we have to go track him down. I would love that. I don't think it's going to be the case. I think the most likely suspect is that they are Daxamites, and that they are like maybe the rebel Daxamites that like blew up Daxam.
Oh, that destroyed the planet.
Well, the planet got destroyed because of Krypton.
I'm sorry.
But maybe there are some evil sect of Daxam, just like we fought against Kryptonian evil sect last season, because this show loves to have us fight evil Supermen.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right, so let's move into The Flash.
Flash Season 3, Episode 8, Invasion! Barry asks Green Arrow for help when aliens attack Central City. But when they realize that won't be enough, they track down the Legends of Tomorrow so they can bring Supergirl in on the battle.
All right, so as I mentioned earlier, since this is the start, the main meat of the crossover, Invasion. I love that all these episodes are titled Invasion, by the way. We're just going to talk through the episode in order of certain things that we liked and didn't like, just stuff that really stood out to us.
Yeah.
Instead of doing the good and the bad, because it's all mixed up. All mixed up. All right, first off, I love that this episode starts in media res Oliver and Barry fighting this giant group of superheroes, and Oliver just kind of being like, "You did it again, Barry. Thanks a lot." I really, really enjoyed that, and then leading us into the opening of The Flash with the multiple logos, which I thought was so amazing.
I also thought it was a nice meta beat to have it start with the two actors that are the heads of the two franchises that have launched
this universe.
I like that a lot.
What else did you like or things that stuck out to you in this episode?
I loved all the Wally stuff. I
Okay.
think Wally has never been happier than he is in this episode. Right at the beginning, you get to see that he is faster than Barry has ever been, which every other...
No. He's faster than
at this
Barry was
time.
at the same
Yes.
time as speed powers.
Which every other speedster also seems to be in time for the season finale. But Keenan Lonzo
Speedster War.
brings such joy to Wally now that he's ascended to being a superhero. And even though he does get sidelined a little later on, the scene where he is in Star Labs sort of training at the beginning, where we go back in time to be like, this is how I got here, I thought was a really nice scene.
I loved... Well, something that I thought was really silly was the scene when the Dominators first showed up. And I get why they did it. They did it because they wanted this scene that they could put in the trailer. But I did think it was kind of dopey when the Dominators landed and Barry ran up there and he was like, "Aliens! Aliens!" It kind of sounded like Barry 5 was like, "Aliens, Andy! Aliens!"
I don't think it's funny that it's branded as like heroes versus aliens because some of the heroes are aliens. But that's okay because they're attractive blonde aliens.
Well, it's only one alien.
Well, yeah, but she's a very important alien, as we will discover very quickly.
That's true. She does kind of turn the whole episode on its end.
I did appreciate that immediately post this scene, the way that we start into the crossover is that Lila shows up and she's the gateway into the Arrowverse. I thought that was a really intelligent way.
She's also been on The Flash before.
She has. A really intelligent way, instead of just Oliver being like, "I'm here," like a good in-story way to introduce her. And then, of course, when... Barry does run everybody over, and then Diggle is immediately motion sick again.
I had that in my...
It was so great.
The recurring gag, the Diggle always gets motion sick and really freaked out by Barry.
Yeah.
They just like insanely freaked. I think that is a funny recurring joke that I hope never goes away.
Again, it's a funny meta joke too because like David Ramsey is such a big, strong, imposing dude, and Grant Gustin is like very lithe and small compared to him that like he could scare that character. I think it's very funny.
I also appreciated that when Barry caught them, they were hunting Vigilante.
Yeah.
Which I was like, oh, that's great. So the Arrow storyline is still moving forward. Vigilante is still going to be a thing.
Yeah.
And I like that their little mini argument where Oliver's just like, "We had this, Barry." And he's like, "Oh, you didn't look like you handled it, man. You didn't."
Yeah. Their leadership styles clash for the first time in this episode because Barry's always kind of been subservient to Oliver, which was just fun to watch.
Now, the key to this episode, and I really like this episode a lot, and just to let you know, we're going to give ratings for each of these episodes, but we're not going to give predictions until the very end. Just because I think we should just do general predictions for it, because, it's a crossover, baby. Baby to you, the internet. The thing that made this episode so great was all the interactions.
Yes.
The interactions in this episode were so strong. Like Supergirl, we repeat the same scene from the Supergirl episode. It's the exact same scene. But then like we introduce Supergirl, we find out that Supergirl is from Earth 38, which is interesting because in the New 52 and DC Rebirth, Earth 38 is the Earth where the heroes were created. Superman appeared in 1938, Batman appeared in 1939, and they have aged in real time.
Yeah.
So we already know that the CW universe is different, but everybody meeting everybody, like Supergirl meeting everybody, meeting Arrow, meeting the Legends, meeting Heatwave, meeting Firestorm, were just fantastic in this episode. They were so good.
I want to tack onto that I appreciate that everyone immediately knows that Supergirl is the strongest character there.
Yep.
Nobody debates the fact that this tiny little girl could kick all their butts. And I love that she thinks that Oliver's hot.
Yes.
Like the minute she sees him, she's like, that guy.
Also,
I would watch their show where they dated.
Also, let's talk a little bit about, we talked about the leadership roles that for some reason, a thing I didn't like is that they're all like, well, let's give Barry leadership.
It is the Flash. So,
This is the Flash episode.
And you would want to give, I get it, you would want to give that role to a metahuman if you're fighting an extraterrestrial. But Oliver has been the leader the longest.
For 5 years now. You have to think about, in this universe, it all started with Oliver.
Yeah.
Oliver is the reason that they all exist.
It was Oliver and Diggle. Oh.
It was even Oliver before Diggle. Diggle would not even be there.
But they were the first team.
Yes, I know. Yeah, true. But like, I appreciated that, like, I like the scene where Barry was trying to go through the leadership moves and Oliver's feeding him lines. And then Heatwave started out. And Heatwave is a positive force throughout all 3 episodes. And I love his line of like, when did Robin Hood start calling the shots?
Yeah.
You know, and you're just like, that is really great. But I also really appreciated Barry having that moment where he was like, he introduced Oliver to Supergirl being like, this is the man that trained me. Although the training only involved like Oliver shooting arrows into his knees.
Yeah. And that little 30-second clip where they're racing, yeah.
And one final beat before I'll give it back to you. I'm sorry. I like the beat where Ray tells Barry that Leonard Snart died.
Oh, that was sad.
A little bit callback to the end of Legends season 1.
Did you like the beat where the team that comprises Firestorm tells Barry about the old message from future Barry?
Yes, let's talk about it a little bit about it. Talk about that. Like, what did you like? What did you hate about that? Or what did you think about the message now that we finally found out what it was? They've been talking about this for 7 episodes now on Legends.
Yeah, I would say that I was slightly perplexed by how I thought it was going to be something that was going to be specific to the Legends timeline. I thought it was going to have further-reaching consequences.
It didn't.
It didn't, and I think that's a little cheap because it's been a great mystery up to this point and a driving force for these 2 characters.
I agree. I also agree that it was too vague. It was so
it
vague
been anything.
that like they really heavily imply that like this has to do with the crossover because he says like I did something, don't trust me.
Yeah.
And then of course when they tell everybody, everybody's like, well, we should listen to Future Barry, but the message is so vague that, like, yeah, for all this buildup, I was kind of disappointed by it.
I actually honestly think it's going to be something that's going to come into play later when, if it's not already planned, I think they left it vague so that it could be a reoccurring moment. But I like it on the one hand because we do get some forward momentum on that because we've had no progress with that storyline up to this point in Legends.
Now let's talk about one of the specific 2 Flash beats because each of these crossovers they all have like things that specifically to their show except for Legends of course. Let's talk about the Wally asking HR to train him, HR Wells, and then HR Wells agreeing. I like this beat. What did you think about it?
I liked it too. I think it's implicit from last week's episode. We saw the 2 characters getting a little bit closer and bonding outside of what the rest of the team was doing, and albeit in a very short scene. I like that we were giving HR purpose because the more purpose he gets across the episodes, the less of a clown he is, although I don't mind him being a clown. And this could not only shape Wally into being a very different speedster than Barry is, maybe a different style, maybe he prefers more of the lightning. I don't know. That could be really interesting. And if HR is going to wind up being a bad guy and betraying them, it's going to start. I don't think he is. But you never know.
No.
It could start here, and I think that could make for fascinating watching as well.
I do not think HR is going to betray them. I now think that HR is here because HR... I think this is the writer's way of explaining how we get the Flash Museum. I think they're like, only a character as crazy and as zany would be like, let's make a museum about Barry Allen and convince the rest of the team to do it.
You'd have to be crazy to think of that.
Because also it's kind of a silly idea.
It is. Well, it's a Silver Age idea.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so let's talk about Martin Stein meeting his pre-Flash, post-Flashpoint daughter. Which is also, by the way, something I predicted in last week's DCTV recap.
Yes, it is.
This is my week for predictions, baby. I liked it. Good scenes.
I thought the actress who played Lily did a really good job and believably wanted him to be her father. Like, I believed from her that there was a relationship there that was damaged. I thought it was kind of sad.
100%. And then the whole team finds out about Flashpoint, right? And they're all like, we can't trust you, Barry, especially led by old sourpuss Cisco.
I know, but I mean, how can you blame them if you're like, you ruined my life and I didn't even realize it? Like, that's a tough pill to swallow.
It is. It's true. But like...
But for a crossover, it maybe...
I don't know. Cisco has been such a downer this season. And it's really been kind of dragging the Flash down for me a lot.
But I think that maybe now that we're addressing it on a larger scale, there's potential that that's going to stop.
Yes. Now, I loved Oliver and Barry's reactions in this scene. Oliver was like, I'm not going anywhere if Barry doesn't go anywhere. I like that he sticks by his friend. I like that also we get to see, Oliver gets to see the future room that we've always seen in Flash, the little white room with all the dots that Eobard used. And we learn that the newspaper's author is no longer Iris West Allen. That is pretty significant. That means that Barry has really screwed with the timeline.
Yeah, he's gonna like not have kissed her again by the end of the season, and they're gonna have that kiss on the porch in season.
But I also appreciate that Oliver was like, "Look, if I had your powers, I would have done the same thing."
Yeah.
Like, I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
I'm totally fine with it.
It's a nice move because Oliver has been really hard on the recruits this season, and he's showing a lot of empathy for Barry here, which I think is nice.
Mm-hmm. Any other things you dug or liked about?
So we have everybody going off on auxiliary missions at different points.
Supergirl leads the team. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So Supergirl gets to lead mostly a Legends-heavy team, and the important thing about that is that Heatwave is in that team, and Heatwave, as we know from Legends, is the nickname king of that team.
Yep.
And he calls her Skirt or Skirts.
And right before that, I think he has the best line of the entire crossover. When she reveals that she has X-ray vision, and I wrote this line down, and Mick goes, "You can see everyone's bits with those peepers."
I think it's funny too because obviously you can't have him curse like that character would do if he was a real person, and they give him like bits and peepers. Like, what is that even? But it's so
he doesn't.
funny.
He talks like a 1930s mook, but it works.
It was just like it was so funny, and it's something that's going to carry over in the next couple episodes. It was too good not to mention.
Yep. Then we get back to the opening fight. And it's like Flash is basically fighting all the superpowered people on the roof. He throws lightning at them. We get to see this amazing Supergirl Flash fight, which is fantastic and almost like another nod to the Superman Flash race. And then also there's something here that has never happened in 100 episodes of Arrow. Oliver Queen runs out of arrows.
Yes, he does. Freaking finally.
His endless quiver finally runs out of arrows.
I do just want to tack onto the Supergirl Flash thing. And
Sure.
I like that because they're all being controlled, that Barry has to trick Kara into destroying the emitter that's controlling everyone.
Yes.
So even though Barry's the mastermind of it, Kara saves the day, still making her the most powerful, important character in the universe. I just thought it was really cool.
Yep, and then of course the episode ends where they're all some of the characters, mainly the Arrow characters, are transported up to the ship to lead us into the episode of Arrow.
To go play Star Trek.
Yep, yeah, there you go. All right, so let's move right into ratings of this episode of The Flash Invasion. Out of a scale of 1 to 5, 5 lightning bolts, 5 being the best, 1 being okay. What would you give this episode? What is technically the first part of the crossover, sort of?
Yeah, I don't see how you give it anything short of 5 because it had a huge task to accomplish and it did it so well. This is my favorite crossover episode of ever. So yeah, I'm gonna give it 5 lightning bolts. What do you think?
Wow, you're telling the people that the next 2 are just no.
I'm talking about of Flash.
Oh, interesting. Easily 5. Mm-hmm. Easily. This was easily the best episode of The Flash this season, possibly the best episode of The Flash ever, almost. It is so good and it's amazing. It has so many moments. It's so surprising what difference Supergirl makes being in this universe.
Yes,
it's crazy.
Completely.
I love it. I love it so much. All right, so let's move right into the next part of the crossover and talk about Arrow.
Arrow, Season 5, Episode 8, Invasion! Oliver wakes up to a life in which his parents are alive and he's about to marry Laurel. Felicity faces a new threat with the help of the Flash and Supergirl.
All right, so I'm going to start off this and say that when I heard that the 100th episode of Arrow was also going to be the crossover, I was really worried because I was like, there's no way that this episode can serve both masters. I was completely wrong. Completely wrong. You guys know out there, I was on the Collider Arrow show. I love Arrow. It has been my favorite of these shows. It hasn't been so great the last couple seasons. This season is really good. But I love the first 2 seasons so much. So when the episode started and we saw the mansion again, and we saw Laurel, even Laurel again, and we saw Oliver in the mansion, it was like, felt like coming home. I was like, oh my God, here it is. Here is the show that I fell in love with. And man, have I missed it.
And even though the premise of the episode is very much like the Black Mercy episode that we saw on Supergirl.
Or very much like several episodes of Star Trek that go in dream worlds and alternate realities.
I think that they did a good enough job with the Easter eggs and the cameos that I didn't mind the fact that we're recycling what's already going to become an old trope in this franchise. Like, there's a scene really early on where Oliver gives the Hosen the arrow that we saw way back in season 1 to Thea, and it's a really lovely moment. And also, like him passing on the mantle of Arrow to his sister. Like, that was so great.
Yep. Now, we of course learn that they're in this giant, alien machine up in the Dominator ship. But before we go any further, let's talk about one of the best parts of Arrow, the dun 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 dun, the theme song.
Yeah.
Like we used it in the opening of this. If you noticed, all of the arrows were the 5 different arrows they've used in every season. Because if you haven't noticed before, in the title sequence, the arrows change every time. In this episode, they used all 5 of them, which I was like, that's fantastic. The title sequences have been stellar so far.
Throughout Invasion.
Okay, so what other stuff did you dig? You dug the Hosen.
I loved seeing Sarah back in this world.
Yeah.
I think that Sarah as Black Canary is really missing from Arrow.
Interesting.
I think, and I wasn't.
Do you want her to leave Legends? Is that what you're saying?
I would love her to be. I mean, I think she's in a good position as the leader of Legends. I enjoy her on the show, but like, I didn't realize how much I missed her on Arrow until she came back. And even though she wasn't Black Canary, just like having her play against Oliver, like I loved having her around.
I miss her against Oliver. Her and Oliver have a very interesting dynamic.
Because you believe that she could destroy him if she wanted to.
Well, because for me, she's the real Black Canary.
I agree. And
she is the comic book I don't care that her name is Sarah Lance and not Dinah Lance. She is more like comic book Black Canary than Laurel has ever thought about being.
And even though I love her relationship with Nyssa, I think she has been the best partner for Oliver.
Yeah.
Throughout the show so far.
She's the one lady of all the ladies he's been with that I'm be like, yeah, that's the person that you could like fight crime with till you're old.
Yeah.
If that's how you do it. Also about to talk people that have been missing, Robert and Moira Queen coming back.
Moira Queen, praise. I love her so much.
I missed Moira Queen so much in the show. And then the actor that plays his dad, we get some interesting tidbits. You learn that in this weird dream universe that he's running for mayor. We mentioned Walter Steele.
Oh, I was so sad, though, that we didn't get to see Walter. Like, I know that if they're together, you have to bring him in this weird way, but I really have always liked Walter.
Well, it was interesting because part of this episode, Robert was trying to convince Oliver to take over the board for him, since he's going to take over mayor of Queen Industries. And Oliver mentions, well, what about Walter? And then Robert mentions this thing where he's like, well, the board will never vote for Walter. So it's like, maybe leading more credence to Walter being Prometheus?
God, I hope so. Yeah, that was really cool.
All right, let's talk about some other stuff.
So I also liked that we got some SCPD appearances throughout this.
Like Lance, old Captain Lance. Hey, it's the Hood's out there.
But that's who he's supposed to be.
Yeah, I know that's who I'm supposed to be.
He's supposed to be.
Don't you? Listen, I'm not a drunk in this. Listen here, Oliver. I'm not a drunk in this universe. I just follow around the hood. Yeah.
And while I think the Hood was a really silly name and maybe one of the most unfortunate ones that the Arrow has had.
They had the old drawing from season 1.
They did, which was so...
Drawn by Neil Adams, by the way.
So great. And I liked seeing Quentin back in tip-top shape because he's been really kind of sad this season. So it was nice seeing that as well.
Another thing that I liked in this episode is every once in a while there was a problem with the program and they noticed glitches. And the glitches were past episodes.
Yes, they were.
I really, really dug it. I also love the idea that in this universe, Felicity has no idea who Oliver is, and Diggle is the Hood or the Green Arrow.
Yeah.
I really, really like that. I shouldn't have been surprised by that, but I was.
Their scene of confrontation, I thought, in the Arrow Cave was...
Where Oliver just walks in the Arrow Cave.
Yeah, it was really cool, and I loved the first time we saw Diggle, like, pretending to be the Green Arrow way, way back, so I liked the return to that as well. Ray Palmer is also in this episode, which is nice because I also really liked Ray on the show, and just to have him cameo and sort of be around for the parties and stuff that's going on at Queen Mansion? Queen Manor?
Queen Mansion.
Queen House. I thought Brandon Routh was pretty good here.
All right, now let's talk about the weakness of this episode. While we're going through the dream nether realms, whatever you want to call it, Flash and Supergirl are just like, well, we can't find the aliens. We don't know what to do. So I guess we'll go team up with Wildcat, Mr. Terrific.
Wild
Dog.
If it was Wildcat, it might have been better.
Well, but then they like go fight some electricity lady in an already very overstuffed episode, and that whole storyline just didn't work for me.
Also, I think that we've done a good job at paring down the teams to the most important characters to highlight throughout the Invasion crossover. And in Flash, there's no recruits because the recruits aren't great. And having them jammed into this episode when we're already jamming in all these guest stars, I'm sure we'll get to Malcolm Merlyn in just a minute.
Yep.
it felt, you're right, it was overstuffed and it was too forced. It was nice to have Flash and Supergirl there because they make everything better, but I don't think that Supergirl, Wild Dog's quite derisive to the point of maybe being derogatory toward her.
Well, he's like, I hate metahumans.
And he's like, look, sweetie, and I don't believe that Kara, even this version of Kara, wouldn't be like, hey, man, or like push him against the wall or something. Like she takes a lot of his guff when she doesn't have to, and I didn't really enjoy watching that.
No, I didn't either. But something I did enjoy watching, even though it was kind of a Deathstroke showing up in this episode. Even though it wasn't Manu Bennett, it was just a stuntman in a suit.
Well, he's off shooting the Shannara Chronicles.
Yes, but it would not be a 100th episode without us seeing Deathstroke. And you know what? If this is the best we can get Deathstroke back in, I'm happy and I'm okay with it. And I like that they did a fight. And then I love that Sarah killed him. Sarah killed Slade.
I also love that that everyone who fought during that fight was in their wedding clothes. Like, they were all dressed up, and they were still
Sarah was in a pretty fancy dress.
Yeah, and Katie Lotz, again, doing most of her own stunt work and like, still kicking ass. Like, I was totally on board for that.
Katie Lotz is fantastic.
She is. She's really great. I do want to say, too, that this episode is my favorite Laurel's ever been.
Mine, too.
I have never been a Laurel fan, and I'm sorry if you disagree with me, that's fine. But I think that Laurel was always designed to be the typical CW pretty love interest, and that's all she has to do in this episode. And she's great.
Yeah.
And she's soft, and she represents everything that Oliver is never going to have.
Laurel was always better when she wasn't involved with the superhero stuff.
Yes. And I liked the return to that, and I think Katie Cassidy did a really good job. I wanted to sidebar that.
All right, and then we have this giant party scene. There's so many cameos. Malcolm Merlin makes a nice Chicago Med reference where he says that he's asked, why isn't Tommy there? And he's like, well, he just got a job at a hospital in Chicago, and that's so far away. By the way, everybody that in the comments has been screaming, like, Tommy is Prometheus. That's the reason why he's not Prometheus, because he's a full-time member. He's a main cast member on a show on NBC.
I mean, I would have really I liked Tommy Merlin a lot.
I wish he could have been in this episode, but I have a feeling that the reason why he's not in this episode is I have a feeling that there is something in his NBC contract that says you do not appear on another network.
You do get to see like the Force ghost of Tommy Merlin toward the end.
But that's we also can see a Force ghost of Roy Harper as well.
Yeah, but that's all overlay, I think, from past episodes.
They're past episodes.
But it was nice to get Malcolm if we couldn't have Tommy.
Yes.
For sure.
What are the things that you dig at the party? Like, especially in the party scene?
I do want to sidebar and say that I like that we saw Smoke Technologies, and that was the thing that everybody was
the
like...
building. They were like, that's the exit out of here.
That's the wrong building. I liked that. This is just a fun fact that I learned. The bartender at the party who's giving a couple of them guff about what they're drinking, that's actually Katie Lotz's father in real life.
Yes, and then she got on set, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, I think like that's very, very sweet. I enjoyed that a lot. Yeah, I loved Oliver's goodbye to his parents.
Yes.
His scene with Thea is pretty good, where you think she's gonna stay and they have to make she has to make her decision. Which is after the parents. Which is after. But I think that him saying goodbye to his parents is a more impactful, more powerful scene, because he has to make the choice to let go of them, not only again, but forever.
I think him saying goodbye to his parents was the strongest performance that Stephen Amell has given on this show in probably 2 years. It was so good. And again, it went back. Arrow in the beginning, like, it had the punchy and the amazing action scenes, but it actually had these scenes that were very mournful and very, like, you were like, oh my God, like, this is so sad, or this means so much.
There was a lot of heart.
There was so much heart. Arrow always wore its heart on the sleeve.
Yeah.
And Arrow's kind of forgotten that. And I miss that aspect of Arrow. And this brought that back in spades. In all three, like, Oliver saying goodbye to Dad, Oliver saying goodbye to Moira again was like, oh. And then the conversation with Thea, and I do not blame Thea at all for Thea being like, I'm just gonna stay behind because my life kind of sucks. And I love that she was like, Oliver, maybe this is your reward. Maybe this is perfect. And I love his line. I even wrote this down. He says, I didn't make those sacrifices for a reward. I did those because it was right. And I was like, that is an amazing line.
Although I will say that if they had given it like 1 minute longer before she joined them outside, it would have been more impactful because when they're all outside ready to...
That's the negative.
She shows up like 10 seconds later.
She shows up like 10 seconds. She's like, yeah, I ate a pretzel, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, he stabbed my mom with a sword. So
That is a negative. That is definitely a negative in that she immediately flipped and kind of a little bit downplayed her moment, which was such an amazing scene.
Yeah. So, but the goodbyes I think were a really nice farewell to those characters and the ending of the episode. It was a nice way to finish.
Let's also talk about the big granddaddy of the fights. Every villain, except for Russell Gould, from the past seasons.
They couldn't fly him from Australia.
Apparently not. He's too busy filming Hacksaw Ridge again. Because he's in Hacksaw Ridge. Go see it. We have Deathstroke. We have Malcolm Merlin. We have some of the Mirakulu soldier people.
Damien Dark.
We have Damien Dark. And it was interesting. We have villains for all of them, and then there's this giant fight, which I love, and then it ends with Oliver putting an arrow right in Slade's eye.
So great.
Yeah.
So satisfying on like 9 different levels.
Yes. Another real quick negative of this, Ragman introduces the idea that the Dominators are Jewish.
Yeah.
And they have this weird language.
That to me like speaks to, in Star Trek where there's the idea that the universe is seeded. That's like that kind of level stuff. I don't like things like that where they want to tie all these different races and aliens and stuff together. Like, just make them aliens. That's enough. Yep. But I didn't like much of anything with the recruits.
So also they get to the portal. They're gonna go through they're gonna wake up, and then Oliver gets this nice little beat with all the Force ghosts of the past. He sees Obi-Wan Kenobi. He sees Yoda. He sees Anakin Skywalker.
But not the Hayden Christensen one.
Plus Tommy. And they all nod and smile at him as he's listening to the Ewok music. But no, I thought it was great seeing all, because we got to see Roy, we got to see Tommy, we got to see nice little clips from the past, and we got to hear Oliver's theme really swell up. Blake Neely again killing it. A theme that we don't hear that often anymore.
I do want to point out, though, that the Force Ghosts were made up of characters who are both dead and not dead. Like, Roy's not dead.
But he's dead to all of them.
I guess. But so I thought that was like, he's not, I can't remember, but he's not the only one. But there's like 2 of them that aren't dead. And I was like, this is very strange.
I can't remember who the other one is.
They're Force ghosting. Maybe it's Walter. And like, we're there with Tommy.
There Sarah one? I don't remember.
I don't remember. I don't think so, because Sarah's there with them.
Okay.
But yeah, it was weird.
But then they all wake up on a spaceship, and let me just put this out. Or they wake up on a spaceship, they get on they fight laser guns, they get on a little shuttle, the Wave Rider saves them. All right, last year, when there was the Legends of Tomorrow 2-part crossover, I thought it was crazy that the Arrow episode started, the opening of that episode started in ancient Egypt.
Yes.
Okay, and I was like, there's an Arrow episode in ancient Egypt. And I thought that was like crazy. This is the 100th episode of Arrow. There was a space battle in this episode.
Yeah. They shoot aliens.
With lasers and pew, 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 in Arrow. That's all I have to say.
What do you do for a crossover if not space?
I don't know. Like, I was just like, if you would have told me watching the pilot of Arrow, if like somebody came from the future and was like, hey, 100th episode of this, alien spaceship battle, I'd been like, get the fuck out of here. You're crazy.
But it was like, it was not uncompelling.
No, I liked it. But I'm just like, I'm bringing up the point that like,
this is the vigilante show and we had a space battle.
Who would have thought?
And they were trapped in an alien device in their own brains.
By the way, this is not a negative. This is all positive. Like, this is just like me being like, who would have thought?
Yeah.
This is crazy. Crazy town. Yeah. And then that's basically the end of Arrow.
Yeah.
But I was really quickly, I want to say overall, I love this episode. It was so, it had so much heart. And again, from the beginning, I was like, there's no way this episode works. And it so worked.
It worked on a ton of different levels. And I think everyone was on their A game, which is why it is so amazing.
Yes. All right. So really quickly, let's give a rating 1 to 5. 1 being not so good, 5 being like space battle awesomeness. What do you give it, Ashley?
I mean, given that, I have to give it a 5 because there was a space battle of awesomeness and there were feelings. It was so good. I can't even believe how good it was. How about you?
I wish we could give it I really want to give it a 0.5.
You can.
But I can't. So I'm going to round up and I'm going to give it a 5.
Nice.
There are some parts of this that would have knocked it down to a 4.5 for me. Just some of the silly goofiness in the Supergirl teaming up with the recruits.
Yeah.
But you know what? Man, this had so many good feels, and this was like...
It's a return to style,
It's
too.
a return to what made me love Arrow in the first place. In space battles. So 5. Definitely 5. All right, let's move on to the final part of this crossover, Legends of Tomorrow.
Legends of Tomorrow, Season 2, Episode 7, Invasion! The Legends work with the Flash, Supergirl, and Green Arrow to kill the invaders, while working out how to defeat the Dominators. Stein gets distracted by an aberration he created in 1987.
Okay, so let's talk about one thing that we haven't talked about so far, but gets really prominently featured at the beginning of this episode. The Star Labs warehouse that looks like the Hall of Justice.
The weird airplane hangar, yeah.
Okay, now I really like that we get to see the Super Friends Hall of Justice, but seems a little weird that it's just a warehouse, right?
It does. I'm pretty sure the exteriors and the interiors are different locations, and maybe
they do not. Well, the exterior is just like a matte painting that somebody did.
Yeah, and the interior is like definitely an airplane hangar.
Yeah.
So for me, there's like a strange disconnect every time we actually go inside the building. I appreciate that it's like pseudo Hall of Justice, so maybe we'll call it that someday if we get that far. But I wish they would have gone a little further and just kind of made it that.
Now, I want to point out another little slight negative in the beginning here. There was a weird scene where Arrow is like, hey, Supergirl, I don't want you to go out and fight with them right now because you're an alien and we're heroes versus aliens right now. Don't know if you caught that.
Despite the fact that in Flash, I was all about having you work with my people and to better them, and we were accepting of the fact that you're the most powerful, and then he's like, you sit down.
Now, I'm going to throw out the stipulation, because CW does this sometimes, where there's weird plot turns, there's weird character turns, and I did think it was weird that Oliver's just like, sit down, our most powerful player, but I kind of think this is the TV budget coming into the world. I think this was like, okay, we're going to have Citizen Steel in this episode. We're going to have our team fighting Dominators in this episode.
Yeah.
We can't afford a flying Supergirl.
I was also bummed that Kara's character accepted that because, again, I don't think her relationship with Oliver at this point earns that. I don't think that she wouldn't have been like, man, screw you. I don't care if you're hot. I'm going out anyway. But Oliver does get a nice turnaround by the end of the episode on this, so I'm willing to let it go.
So you think it comes around? Okay.
I do think so.
What's some other cool... Oh, well, real quick. The awesome, again, 3 for 3 awesome title sequences of all the little legends.
This is I really want to mention that we get to see Felicity and Cisco be science bros together, which is something that I'm excited about because Caitlin and Martin Stein are
Not science sisters?
Building nanotech. Science bros? Sisters? I don't know. Science pals. They get to be super science
hombres.
pals. Sure, science hombres. And then... but they get to be on the Wave Rider together, the two characters that I think would appreciate this technology and what it can do the most.
And they freaked out about time travel a lot, which was cute.
So much. And it's a nice moment for Felicity because I think since season 2 she's been kind of a bummer and getting more and more of a bummer. So this feels like, again, like we were talking about in the Arrow episode, like a return to form on who Felicity Smoke is.
And for Cisco, too. Cisco got to be a little, he wasn't so much of a downer.
Yeah, so hopefully this could be more of this for both of them from here on out.
All right, so I really dug Martin and his daughter in this, and we learned that his daughter went to MIT, and they get to have like a nice relationship together.
I like Lily a lot.
Let's talk about the biggest character turn of this episode. All right, the thing that surprised me the most, the thing
I think I know what you're gonna bring up.
We all were like, finally, and that is Mick flying the Wave Rider.
Why would you ever let him fly a ship? What qualifies him? What makes you think he's balanced enough?
In my head, I see a scene where like, well, I think it's because he went with the two new people.
Yeah.
But
look,
like,
it was amazing, but it was an irresponsible decision.
But in my head, I think we're missing part of the scene there. And in my head, I think we're missing the part of the scene where Nate tries to sit down in the chair and Mick just shoves him out of it.
He's like I don't know. What would he? Nate doesn't have a nickname, but he'd be like, move over, hairdo.
Get over, flat top.
Yeah, flat top. But yeah, I've written all in caps, why is Mick flying the ship? It's such a dangerous, horrible idea.
Okay, so they go back to the past because the other heroes are talking to the president. And in the past, we get the full reveal of the Citizen Steel costume.
We can just pretend that didn't happen.
Whoo! Plastic Captain America looks real bad.
With the weird Mega Man helmet.
Well, again, this is another thing where there's an interesting thing about Legends. Legends has so many people with superpowers that sometimes on Legends you can be like, they're trying to save money.
Yes.
And the Citizen Steel outfit, I think, is entirely to be like, oh, if we do this, we don't have to animate his entire body.
Yeah.
We only have to animate this section,
In
this,
fact,
and this.
most of the time they didn't animate any of his body. He still remained in the costume. I thought last episode that the costume looked okay on the mannequin. I thought it looked horrific in real life.
It looks bad. Yeah, I don't know. Let's go talk about... really quickly, we're going back to Martin and his daughter. And I want to talk about Martin kind of having a hissy fit, which I liked. I thought it was interesting. And he was like, I'm not Barry Allen. I'm going to fix my mistakes because I'm a time master.
Yeah, I thought Caitlin having a retort with, like, she's not a mistake.
Very fair.
Was a really powerful moment. I don't think Caitlin gets enough of those moments, and I like it when she gets to do that.
Here's the interesting thing that I think about this timeline. And they sort of imply it, but they don't confirm it. The idea that it seems like, to me, that Caitlin and Lily are friends.
They seem like friends!
And that,
I want her to be on Flash.
And as far as Caitlin knows, they've always been friends. That Lily just didn't pop into existence.
I will say that they do specifically state that Lily was born in 1987, which probably makes her 5 or so years older than Caitlin.
Okay.
Because Caitlin and Barry are contemporaries. I think that's okay, but I don't know if they would have been classmates. They might have been colleagues, though. But if she turned, like, I would love to see her on Flash so much. Like I said previously, I think that actress does a great job.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the heroes meeting the president, but then they actually meet the Men in Black guy with glasses, and it's the same Men in Black guy that is back in the 50s that the Legends encounter.
With the same glasses.
I kind of liked the Men in Black being weirdo villains. And
Did you?
I did. And I like the older actor that played the guy with the glasses.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I really wanted them to call him King Faraday. This is a classic DC Comics character from New Frontier who is a government spook. I was really like, call him King Faraday, call him King Faraday. I don't believe they gave him a name.
He's not named throughout the episodes, which
Man with
also
glasses.
feels weird because in my notes I think I wrote him as evil white guy and evil old white guy.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because he's responsible for trapping the Legends and Co. in 2 different timelines. In the past they get captured and you learn that the spooks in his organization are torturing a Dominator.
Yes.
And that's going to come into play when they return to the future. And it's kind of a bummer that that's happening because you're like, oh, humans are the worst after all.
But then it also comes into the head where we learn that the glasses man reveals that the Dominators only came to Earth because they knew the timeline had changed, that Barry had screwed it up, and that they're like, we'll go away if you give up your time-shifty mutant. I don't know why I call him mutant, Meta. That guy. Like, we don't want him to screw up the timeline anymore, and we're afraid of him, which, again... I like this beat. I like this beat, too, because Flashpoint has kind of been this dangling guillotine over all of these shows where you're just like, well, it's kind of affecting everything, and now it's getting in the way. But now it serves a purpose where these aliens are like, we're afraid of this guy because he literally can zap us out of existence.
Right, and this actually introduces that a specific Dominator, that the one that you've seen tortured, is the one leading the charge in the 2016, the present day. So not only do the Dominators want Barry to turn himself over and fix the mistakes of the past, and then they'll go away and leave Earth alone, but the evil Men in Black guys are saying that as well. Barry's kind of left with no choice, and he comes to all the heroes, and he's like, I'm gonna give myself up. And
which is a very good Barry Allen moment.
Right. If you're a hero, that's what you would do. Superman would do it, Batman would do it, they would all do it.
Yeah, the aliens would not do it. That's why they're versus them.
Except Supergirl.
Nope, she wouldn't either. They're versus her.
But I appreciate, too, that everybody has to rally together to build Barry up, because when Cisco figures out that they're directly responsible for
let's talk about that a little bit. Let's break that down. So Cisco and Felicity, they rescue the Dominator from the past. They find out that it's the same Dominator general who's leading the charge in the future. And Cisco gets a little bit of comeuppance where he's like, oh, wait a minute. Now I screwed with the timeline. And this whole invasion wouldn't be happening if I hadn't saved this dude.
Yeah.
What do you think about that flip, that reveal?
So I think this could not have come at a better time. We talked about how Cisco's been a sad sack
He's been a
throughout
downer
this entire season, and this gives him a chance to understand what Barry's going through.
Yeah.
Now, motivations and morality aside, he gets a chance to see that even when you're trying to do good, sometimes mistakes happen.
Yep.
And this is really pretty much only exists to be a turning point for Cisco so that him and Barry can get back to being bestie best friends again.
Yep.
But I don't mind it.
No.
And it serves the purpose of the overall narrative. And then it's nice that when everyone is like, hey, Barry, you don't have to go, that Cisco's really the one leading that charge. And Diggle, who was also very upset over the change in his child.
Yes. Now, let's just skip right ahead to the big old brouhaha on the rooftop, as I'm going to call it, where you see all the heroes. It's the shot they had in all the trailers. All the heroes are there, and Oliver's got to shoot these nanotech.
The nanotech developed by Martin Stein and Lily. He has to shoot them in
I'm going to call it Lily Tech.
in a big circle around him into all of the Dominators who have threatened to drop a metabomb. And I just want to sidebar because the metabomb is from the original Invasion storyline.
Yeah, it's the bomb that can take away superpowers.
So it's just really cool to see like this actually happen. And so he does that. He does a great job. He doesn't run out of arrows.
He doesn't run out of arrows. So, okay, in Legends, infinite.
Yeah.
In Flash, he's going to run out. In Arrow, it's all a dream. But I appreciate that the granddaddy of this universe, the originator of this universe, is the guy who he's got to hit all this. It's about him.
He gets something important to do, and once he's done that, of course, it's nice to see him and Felicity actually like functional together. She activates that and disables all of the Dominators, so that Sarah, because we're not letting Mick drive the Wave Rider anymore. Sarah, back in charge, brings Firestorm to the metabomb, and he has to transmutate.
He transmutates.
He transmutates the metabomb into being not a threat anymore, which mostly means a lot of shouting and setting himself even more on fire. And I think this is a great character moment for Firestorm because he's been building and building and building, and their relationship has gotten more and more interesting, and to see him save the world is really gratifying.
And let's talk about it. It's such a great scene because, again, it's like basically this universe's Justice League, and that's really cool. But then they save the world, the president brings them up on stage and weirdly takes pictures of it. It's weird. And we just move on, and then we go to a party, and I gotta point out this party. You see all the heroes, they're partying in civvies.
Yeah.
And then Supergirl walks past Brandon Routh, Ray Palmer. And remember how I said in Supergirl there's been a lot of Superman the movie jokes? Well, we get a Superman Returns joke with Brandon Routh, who has played Superman, being like, hey, she looks like my cousin.
He says, quote, I wrote it down, looks like my cousin. It took me a second to get that joke.
I knew immediately.
It was so well done. And the camera follows Kara, and it's followed by the scene where Oliver apologizes to her. And it's nice to see that Oliver has come to a place where he can be calm and he can be gentlemanly and he can admit that he was wrong. So this is why I can let the scene at the beginning of the episode go. Because you're like, oh, Oliver is a good man and a really good leader. This also is the scene where we get our final beautiful heatwave moment where he walks through the scene and turns to Supergirl and goes, hey, Skirts, call me.
Call me,
and you're just like, what? You like it's
Did
so.
you see me? Hey, did you see me driving the Wave Rider? Yeah.
It's just so creepy.
I can fly too, Skirts.
On like 9 different levels, but
You can X-ray my bits anytime.
It's so right. It's like it's the best joke of the episode.
Yeah.
I can't even look at you.
All right, so and then of course the episode ends with Barry and Oliver, just really nice. Let's get straight to the rating. 1 to 5, 5 being the best. Ashley, what would you give the Legends Invasion crossover episode?
I mean, I'd really like to give it a 6, but I think I'll have to settle for a 5.
Interesting.
I think it was really good. I think this was a great finale. I think it had the most great character moments, and it tied everything up pretty nicely in an hour. I was quite impressed.
Interesting.
Are you gonna go high?
No. I am going to give this episode a 4.
Oh.
I think this is the weakest hour of the 3-part crossover.
Really?
I really do. I think the Citizen Steel stuff just doesn't work.
I just like 2 scenes.
I think a lot of the 1950s stuff doesn't really work. And there's a lot of moments like Oliver being like, sit down, Supergirl, because we can't afford you.
Yeah. I guess by this point, I was just so taken aback by the fact that they managed to do this story skillfully and make it interesting that I was like, I'm in, 10 out of 10.
I think it's great. I think it's really good. But like, I think it is the weakest of the 3. I think Flash had the better character moments over this one.
That's fair.
Because it was them meeting sort of more in their hero personas than at a party. So, but that's just
the party in the airplane hangar is weird, but it is nice that it's introduced by a female African-American president.
Yeah, it's whatever. It's cool. All right, so let's move into predictions. But in this predictions, let's do predictions. You can do it for any of the shows, anything specifically in the crossover that you think like pointed you towards the future of any of these shows. Anything you want to throw out there.
So we know now that Cisco gave Kara a little version of what Barry had so that she can jump in between the different Earths. And so I think that this means that even though we know that there is a musical crossover episode coming over between Supergirl and The Flash, I think that we're going to see Supergirl cropping up in some of the other shows a lot more. And I think she's going to be on Legends because there's too many joke possibilities for her not to show up on Legends. Oh my God, I just...
Skirts.
By the end of the season. So I'm predicting that we are going to see Supergirl crop up, not only in Flash, but in Legends by the end of the season.
Interesting.
What are you predicting is coming up?
I think we're going to see Captain Cold next week.
I want him back.
I think we're seeing Captain Cold next week. I think there have been too many Flashpoint timeline screw-up illusions to not finally reveal that he was somehow saved by that. Because I don't think he's dead at all. Whether Reverse Flash saved him or whether something in the timeline wonky, I don't know. I think Captain Cold is back next week. I think we will see him next week. And I think Lily is going to eventually join the crew.
Oh, I hope so.
And I have a prediction that she'll turn into sometimes who has been Firestorm's girlfriend, sometimes enemy, Firehawk.
Oh, that'd be cool. That'd be so cool.
Yeah. I think because she's going to be similar. Or they could go even crazier and they could do like what happened with the Jason Rush Firestorm and maybe she merges with Jax.
Ooh, that'd be weird.
Just throwing it out there. But I think it's going to be one of those things. But I think Captain Cold is on the horizon. So there you go. Okay, so usually we ask like what was the best of the week. These episodes are too close to compare. What I want to ask is, this is the third crossover that the CW universe has done. The first crossover was just like a singular episode of Arrow and a singular episode of Flash that were like kind of their own stories. The second one was all set up for Legends of Tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then this one is Invasion. Of those three crossovers, which one's the best?
And this one is easily
the
best. It is the most ambitious thing that any of the shows have attempted
100%.
to date. And they pulled it off. And they pulled it off based on a really dated kind of silly storyline.
Yeah.
While having amazing character beats tied in there and celebrating Arrow's 100th episode with a show that's not even on the same Earth. Like,
Yeah.
I just think what was accomplished across these 4 episodes is too tremendous not to celebrate it as the
100%.
accomplishment that is. But I have a soft spot for Barry's introduction on Arrow. I thought that those were a really good episode.
Those were really great. Called
Yeah.
The Scientist.
Yeah, there you go.
I really like that episode as well. I agree. This is the best crossover, easily to date. Easily one of the best hours of DC anything ever.
Yeah.
I would say ever. This is really, really strong stuff. And guys, we want to know what you think. So go down to the comments, and I want you this is the question that I want to ask you, because next week will be the mid-season finales for all these shows.
Yep.
And I want some comments to read during that video. So this is the question I'm going to ask to you. What do you most want to see in the mid-season finales for any of these shows? Say whatever. What do you want to see on Legends? What do you want to see on Arrow? What do you want to see on Supergirl? Do you think we're going to find out about the identity of Prometheus? Do you think like we're going to learn more about Savitar? Do you think we're going to see Captain Cold? Do you agree with me? Let me know in the comments, because I'm going to pick the best ones or the ones that are right. And you know what? We might give away a prize or two. And we might talk about them and see if you're right, see if you're wrong. We're going to see if you can match up to us. We all know Captain Cold's going back. That's my answer. You got to come with something else. So just go down in the comments, have lots of fun down there, and we'll read them next week.
Yeah.
All right, guys, thanks for watching. Make sure you click subscribe, because next Tuesday we're going to return to our regular Flash recap show.
And on Friday, we will be back with the full DCTV recap show.
That's right, back to normal things, because there's no problem in the timeline here at all. No problem at all. Yeah, it's not like Hitler won World War II, right?
No.
He didn't, did he?
I don't know anymore.